Oh, yeah. Ancient aliens or advanced humans? How about a global trade network thousands of years ago? Possibly. What you're looking at is a petroglyph from Bluff, Utah. They date these petroglyphs to be between 2,500 and 800 years old. Some of them are older, but if you look at this petroglyph panel, beautiful panel, Bluff, Utah, amazing petroglyphs and Native American ruins, cliff dwellings, really cool stuff out there. What's the first thing you notice with this petroglyph? Now, for me, when I started to look at this petroglyph, I was like, wow, it reminds me of Angkor Wat. It reminds me of some of the deities and gods depicted in India, Cambodia, Egypt, ancient Sumer, but we're in Utah. So how is that even possible? Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, they're ancient astronauts. They're aliens from outer space. And you know what? A few years ago, I was probably that guy. Well, the more research I do and the more I hang out with cool people that have been decoding astrology and astronomy and the zodiac and the electric universe theory, it appears there's a lot more than meets the eye at first. So we're going to look at some of the petroglyphs, and then we're going to look at symbology, symbolism, and images from Sumer and Egypt and India, ancient Hindu deities. And I've also got some videos I want to share with you. So thank you very much for being here with me. I hope you're having a beautiful day today. Buckle up, Buttercup. Let's go. Also, wanted to give a huge shout out for an event that I've got coming up tomorrow with Jay Matta. Let me ask you a question. Are you ready to turn your passion into profit? Now is an excellent opportunity. I partnered with Jay Matta from Gnostic TV, a prominent alternative media platform, for an upcoming free webinar via Zoom. It's going to be tomorrow, 2 p.m. Mountain Time. Together, Jay and myself have produced over 7,000 podcasts, and now we're ready to show you how it's done. Join us for a free Zoom webinar where we are going to reveal some of our secrets to creating captivating podcasts and content that you can create on a multitude of platforms from YouTube to Spotify. Discover how to craft stellar content that grabs attention, use artificial intelligence to streamline your thumbnails, descriptions, and game plans, and learn how to secure sponsors and top-notch equipment, even on a shoestring budget. This is your chance to let your voice be heard and transform what you love into a thriving business. Oh, yeah. Imagine making money doing what you love to do and being able to choose your own hours. You couldn't ask for a better time than now. Don't miss out. Secure your spot today. Email me, leakproject@gmail.com, or you can send me a text, 970-616-5677. Let's create something special and amazing together. All right, let's get into this. So what do you see? What do you see when you look at this petroglyph? You'll notice these dudes that have like lightning bolts shooting down their body. They have these interesting, like, it almost reminds me of musical notes or some type of antenna above their heads. And then you'll notice Starman to the right, and he's got an X in his body. Well, I have found similar iconography and symbology, Egypt, India, ancient Sumer, like I said, Cambodia, around the world. I've even got a 7,000-year-old petroglyph I'm going to share with you from Siberia that shows a menorah, what looks like Viking rune stones, and depictions of the electric universe, which have been talked about in certain scriptures and passages of mythology. It's quite fascinating, right? Let's take a look at some of these. So like right here, these petroglyphs are a lot older than, I don't think they're older than the ones we were just looking at, but they're older than a lot of petroglyphs that are like, you can see what they are. You can see how a lot of this has been kind of weathered away. Notice how there's what appears to be like light bulbs. And then there's this guy again that has all these lines shooting out of the top of his head, a lot of plasma stuff. Very, very interesting. So when you look at some of these symbols, like this one as an example, let's go back to this one. Do you see the flowers that are shooting upwards? And some of these look like plants shooting out of people's heads. Why is that? What's up with that? Well, if we take a look at, let's go to some of the symbols of Hindu deities. Let me share this with you. Here are a couple of deities, ancient Hindu deities. Now you'll notice the headdress. It almost kind of looks like an antenna, right? The elongated skull, or at least an elongated headdress, is depicted in many of the gods and goddesses from around the world. Various timelines, 7,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. We have evidence of elongated skulls that have been discovered in Peru and various places. Some of them appear to be natural. Some of them appear to be forceful, where they actually did cranial deformation in attempts to make their heads grow that way. Very, very similar, yet thousands of miles away from each other. Let's go back here, Rad. Let's go to this one. Now, notice this guy here has like a star head, and then he has an X in his body, and then he's holding what looks like some type of mushroom flower. Well, this, now what you're looking at, is a 7,000-year-old petroglyph from Siberia that shows the menorah head man. I call him menorah head man because it looks just like a menorah. And you'll notice the symbol that Hopi use as the world, the four corners, the northeast, southwest, or the circle with the four dots in it. And then you're going to notice to the right of that what appears to be a giant tree, like Jack and the Beanstalk style. Or is it some type of reference of a plasma energy? Or is it the tree of life? Well, we have the same symbols around the world from various times. And I'm going to show with you the Perot paper called it's Z-pinch instability of antiquity. Very, very fascinating, where Anthony Perot's working in a laboratory and he's doing these experiments with tons of plasma. And when he does these experiments, after doing these experiments, he realizes that these plasma forms that are being created look very similar to petroglyphs seen around the world. So my question to you is, if we go back to the Younger Dryas event, major cataclysms around the world. People are literally hiding in caves to survive. Radiation storms, asteroids, comets, plasma, you name it. It's in like half of the world, not half of the world, but a large part of North America is on fire. Then, after these events, years later, people start to rebuild. Civilization starts to thrive, especially in places like the Middle East. And guess what else happens around that time? Religions are created, gods and goddesses and deities and demons. Energies are deified. And these events that were etched in stone and seen around the world are now turned into scriptures. They're turned into gods and energies that decide the fates of humanity. After that, dogmatic practices are then created to, hopefully, when they create these dogmatic practices, they're like, well, what do we do so this doesn't happen again? How do we make sure that these events don't take place? Do we glorify the gods? Do we create structures and civilizations in their likeness to glorify them in hopes that it doesn't happen again? Well, it appears so. Let's take a look at some of these other symbols right here. Notice another Hindu deity with the elongated skull. Here's a Sumerian deity, often referred to as the Anunnaki. And this one in particular is very interesting because some of these images, you might think it's like some type of Stargate or something, which it potentially could be. but I've got more information about that. Also, notice how many of these figures, this looks like it could be Thoth, Lord Thoth to me in Egypt, is handling right next to what's oftentimes referred to as the Tree of Life. Here's another Anunnaki representation next to the Tree of Life. Here is another depiction. You could either say a Gigi or Anunnaki because it's the bird. The bird deifies from above. The bird deifies oftentimes these beings or deities that come from above, that come from the heavens, that come from the stars. But the question is, were they actually beings that came from the stars, or did we watch these events take place in the heavens, our ancestors, and then later they were glorified? Or is it all of the above? You know, I'm pretty open. I'm open for debate. And you know what? I can get things wrong. And I can also get a lot of things right. I'll give you an example. The other day, we did a video where we showed some webcam footage, and we're going to look at this again. And it looks like all these rods are shooting out of a volcano in Mexico, Popocatépetl. And after doing more research, it appears that they were Starlink satellites. It's pretty cool. It was Starlink. But guess what? I shared more footage of that volcano and what appears to be rods shooting into the volcano that are not Starlink. So once again, people try to debunk me. They'll take a little piece of something and say, oh, you're wrong, Rex. Yep, I was wrong. Thank you very much. Now prove to me that the other two pieces of footage that I shared are Starlinks. I'd really like you to prove that. But anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. Matter of fact, let's go to that right now. Let's take a look at this footage right now, shall we? I'm going to show you the footage, and then we're going to talk about it. Where'd it go? Okay, we've got the UAP shooting into a volcano. We've got the... Stand by, ladies and gentlemen. Bank, 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 bank. Bank, bank, bank. Okay, video footage. Hi, how are you doing? Okay, here's the footage. Here's the footage. Here we go. Tell me that this is Starlink, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. It's just one. Yeah, it's shooting into the volcano, directly into the volcano. It's just one object. One object shooting into the volcano. Is that Starlink? No, that's not Starlink. Now, what is Starlink? What is Starlink is right here. And I confirmed it was Starlink, and I'll tell you how I confirmed it was Starlink. I actually went to the Starlink website and I looked for launch sites that they did. And I found a launch site or a launch. They launched on the 22nd of August, and this footage was captured on the 23rd of August via webcam. So, I could find it. Complete. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Thank you for your patience, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Here we go. So, this is a webcam. Popocatépetl. Popocatépetl volcano. It's on the 23rd of August. And you can see, notice all these, what looks like rods launching out of the volcano. Based on the webcam and the frame rate of the webcam, it appears that they're rods. They're actually satellites behind Popocatépetl. So, now that we got that out of the way, we can get into the more interesting subject of these petroglyphs. Let's go back to the petroglyphs now. Okay, so we got something shooting into Popocatépetl that isn't Starlink, and then we have Starlink behind it. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right, let's go back to the important stuff here. We got the plasma glyphs right here. So we're looking at these plasma glyphs, and now I want to show you this Perrott paper, the Anthony Perrott paper. Because once you look at this paper and you look at the way that they were able to duplicate many of these petroglyphs in a laboratory with enormous amounts of plasma, a lot of these petroglyphs start to make sense. Now, with that in mind, not all petroglyphs are plasma vents. There's so much more to the story here. Okay, window capture. Anthony Perrott. Boom. So what you're looking at right here is, it's called Characteristics for the Occurrence of a High Current Z-Pinch Aurora as Recorded in Antiquity. Anthony Perrott, a scientist at Los Alamos Labs, is doing experiments with just exuberant amounts of plasma. And when he's doing these experiments, he realizes that a lot of these plasma creations look very similar, if not identical, to petroglyphs from around the world. So like this one that we're looking at right here, you can see, well, let's go to one that's even better. Let's go to the left of this. Right here, boom. Look at this. Notice these plasma columns. See these things? And then you'll notice like partial squatter man guys that look almost like a vase with lines shooting out of it. Look at how similar that is to these plasma structures. It's identical. It is absolutely identical. Let's look at some other stuff here. Boom. Look at that. Experiments to the right, petroglyphs to the left. So what did our ancestors see? What caused an event that was so massive? People from around the world saw it. They etched it in stone. And then they deify these events, and then religions and gods and goddesses, angels and demons are created to glorify this event. Very interesting. I'll show you some more. Take a look down here. Look at this. These are similar petroglyphs seen around the world. The squatter man. Squatter man. What's this? Oh, squatter man. Whole bunch of squatter man. And look at how there's like lightning bolts next to the squatter man. Swirly lines. Stuff that you're like, oh man, were they tripping out? What were they doing? Well, most likely they were seeing things take place in the heavens that they didn't understand. And so they were etching it in stone. And then later, these events were turned into religions, and it was turned into a language. This is a language of some type. Now, right here, you'll notice what looks like an upside down menorah. There's more lines, but it's like an upside down menorah. And also notice that there is a ram on each side of the menorah, and the ram is looking the opposite direction. This could be described in an event that took place in a specific star constellation. The ram could be representation of Aries, and so they're watching this event take place around Aries. Maybe. But a lot of these petroglyphs are absolutely star charts or star constellations. So when you go back and you read this and you look, or you go back and you look at these symbols, you can say, oh, they're not aliens. They're star constellations. Like notice this one right here. Bunch of squatter man. And then what does this represent? This circle with the line that goes through it. Because I have seen this petroglyph on a multitude of panels as well. And then we see these flowers or these trees, and some of these flowers and trees will actually come out of the deity's head. What does that represent? And look at this. See, this guy's got something coming out of his head right up here. And then a lot of these symbols will have what looks like ducks or birds coming out of the being's head. You'll notice this one here. What does this mean? You've got the guy with the antenna system or the frequencies or the notes shooting up as well as to the right, which would actually be to the left if you were looking at the image there. But notice the guy next to him. He's upside down. He has no head. What does that mean? See that? Upside down, no head. What does that represent? Here's another one where you can see the duck. Why is it freezing up? So no, let me zoom in. Well, if you look at this one, you'll see the duck coming out of that line right there. And it actually making me think of a petroglyph I saw in Utah where it looked like it was a boat. It could have been actually that duck. The more I think about it, it was probably that duck. Look at this guy. The reason I'm showing you this guy is because he has his, depending on which way you look at it, he's got his right hand up and his left hand down. Or if you were to look at it the other way, it'd be his left hand up and his right hand down. However, it makes more sense that his right hand is up, his left hand is down, and also notice his feet. One foot is facing forward, the other foot is facing right. You know what this most likely is? As above, so below. This represents as above, so below, just like Baphomet, just like the statue in Washington, D.C., where George Washington is sitting down. He has one hand up and he has the other hand down holding a staff. One of his feet is pointing outwards and the other foot is inwards. This is ancient symbology. As above, so below. Right there. But this is like at least 1,000 years old. It could be 2,500 years old. Now, these ones appear to be a little bit newer. Look at this. What does this represent? Well, you've probably got the clan right there, the clan shield or symbol, or that could be some type of sun representation or plasmoid representation. Then you've got the mask. You've got this interesting flower pointing upward while the arrow shoots downward. But let's look to the right here. What does that represent? The twins. Think for a minute. Twins, zodiac. What represents the twins in the zodiac? My friend Angela pointed this out. Gemini. That's Gemini. So we've got a combination of astrological events, astrology, and history etched in stone. This one right here is probably my favorite panel. Absolutely one of my favorite panels. And I'll tell you why. Look at how well proportioned the anthropomorphic figure is in the center there. It's got, I mean, even his feet, his legs. I mean, you can see obviously they didn't autonomically correct. I keep saying that word wrong. His arms, but his hands, his feet, his legs. Looks like he's got some kind of earrings and headdress. And if you look at this a little bit longer, you'll notice that there's what appears to be another headdress to the right of him. To the left of him, you will see another, what appears to be headdress on some type of like staff. And then these two flowers pointing outward. That reminds me of Egypt, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. It also reminds me of feminine energy. And I'm sure you can figure that out why. So then you've got another one of these appears to be like antenna systems, something that you would see at Angkor Wat or via many Hindu deities, a lot of stuff, structures and megaliths in Cambodia and the Indo-Asia Pacific. Then underneath that, you've got a wolf print, which probably represents the clan, the wolf clan. But what is this guy? Now, this is called the wolf panel. If you look it up, it's called the wolf panel, Wolfman panel. The Wolfman panel because of these wolf prints. This one right here I find very interesting. You see what appears to be a thunderbird or a representation of a bird holding another bird. So you've got this thunderbird holding a bird. You've got this interesting headdress, what looks like almost Oriental or Asian persuasion in Utah. Now, what do these represent? Because I found a bunch of these at various panels in southern Utah. Are they light bulbs? Is it a representation of the sun or a planet and its surrounding? Like I noticed this guy to the right here, it made me think of an eclipse or the beginning of an eclipse. So could this represent some type of energy field? Is this like a positive, negative? Is this a guy that shows up right here in the center and he's got this elaborate headdress on? He's got this high technology. He shows up to the natives. The natives are like, wow, this is incredible technology. We want to deify you. We want to put you in stone. We want to remember you and what you brought to us and what you showed us. We would love to remember that. Or is it an event that took place in the heavens, and so they deified it, made a story out of it, and now they have a language that they can pass on for future generations? I don't know. I think it's pretty dang cool. Here's some more plasmoids and plasma representations that are duplicated in the laboratory with enormous amounts of with enormous amounts of plasma. You see a lot of these X's. I see these X's all the time. And then here are some X's that are created in these simulations of plasma, as well as what appears to be like alien eyeballs. There's a lot of the ancient alien astronaut theorists that'll take these depictions and say, oh, it was the grays, man. It's ancient aliens. But really, it's most likely representing what our ancestors saw in the skies. Pretty amazing. Absolutely mind-boggling, in my opinion. A lot of artifacts out there just left, like little pieces of pottery and arrowheads. Make sure you leave them there so the next group of people that check it out can enjoy it. But you can see a lot of these like old mud homes out there as well. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And then this guy right here, you'll notice the ducks, the duck heads, the plasma, lightning, etc. See if we can find some more of those in this paper right here I'd like to share with you. Look at this. Right here. See? Here's the experiment. Here's the petroglyphs. They look identical. Europe and America. Some people call them caterpillars. Plasmoids. Oh, look at this. What are we looking at here? We were just looking at these. Identical. Here's the experiment. Here's the flowers. We were literally just looking at those. Let's see if we can go back here. See? Boom. There we go. And then these interesting. Here's the experiment. So you'll notice that these big figures, these anthropomorphic figures, they've got the plasma stuff inside of their body. So that tells me that these aren't people, these aren't aliens, these are the star people, because it's what we saw in the heavens and our ancestors turned them into people, aka star people. Pretty freaking cool. Very, very, very cool. So the ancient alien theorists might be a little bit disappointed when they see this. And it doesn't mean that we haven't been visited by ancient aliens. I mean, I would be willing to bet if I could go to Vegas and put some money on it, if there were odds, I would bet that we have been visited for a long time. I'd bet they're still here. Matter of fact, we're probably an experiment. We were probably placed here. If you look at our evolution and the evolution of every other animal on the planet, where are the aliens, folks? How did we evolve to this unless we were placed here? I don't know. Once again, I can't prove it, and you can't prove I'm wrong. So very, very interesting. Like these guys right here. A lot of the ancient alien theorists are going to say that those are ancient aliens. They're not. They're plasma events. Plasmoids. So I think that's really cool. Now let's go to, let's look at some of these symbols from around the world and compare them to what we're looking at here. Okay, this one I find really cool. And the reason I find it really cool is, dang it, where'd they go? I really want to show you this. Okay, I'm going to have to pull this up a different way. Stand by. I think I found a petroglyph that could be depicting this event, but it's in bluff. Here we go. This is it. Right here. Okay. Now, notice this guy. You have to really look carefully. So if you follow it, looks like there's this line. This I don't know, like a pathway, like an orbit, some type of trail. Maybe it's a trail. Maybe he's up in the mountains. But it shows these weird lines that appear to be some type of movement. And then it goes all the way to right here. And you'll notice right here, this guy, looks like there's a guy in some doorway. He's got real long legs, which reminds me of like a shadow. When somebody walks out of a doorway and there's certain shadows, it makes the limbs look really long. You'll notice that so where does this guy come from? Is this showing some guy coming down from space? Or is it actually showing just a trail that some guy took from another part of the village or another village? He came from another town. And this is his route that he took. And then it shows him in like this doorway? Or was it a plasma event where there was some type of comet or asteroid and people tracked this comet and asteroid and they followed it until it created this incredible archetype that we would call maybe the squatter man? It's a very, very interesting petroglyph. And it reminds me a lot of these ancient symbols that you see where there's what appears to be some type of stargate or something like this one. Look at this one. Now, I think this is supposed to be Ea going into the Great Abzu or coming out of the Great Abzu. You'll see this doorway and you'll see these squiggly lines on the outside of it, which could represent water or energy. So I could definitely see how they would call it Ea. Notice how he has an elaborate headdress on. Very similar, actually. If you look at it, it has the different lines. Very similar to what we were just looking at in these petroglyphs on the Kachina panel. It's called the Kachina panel, by the way. It's called the Kachina panel. Here's another representation of the Anunnaki. They've got these interesting lines shooting out of their elongated skulls or their elongated headdress. What does that mean? Here's another depiction of the tree of life and the gods creating humankind. You've got the slave over here doing some work, or like, you know, a worker. And then you've got this lady, this goddess with this elaborate headdress holding her child next to the tree of life. Look at this. These are ancient Sumerian deities. These are ancient Anunnaki figures with elongated skulls, elongated headdresses. Here's a Hindu temple that shows the same thing, the elongated, much more elaborate and intricate. Here's another tree of life, Anunnaki with the wings representing coming down from the heavens, giving consciousness into the tree of life. That's what the pine cone represents in my mind, is consciousness, the third eye, the connection to source, the connection to divine providence, the connection to divinity. This is a relic from like 1100 CE in Sweden of the tree of life. Lord Thoth next to the tree of life in Egypt. Another Sumerian Anunnaki. This pill could represent water. It could represent cosmic DNA. It could represent all of the above. I mean, what did it, just because it originally meant something over thousands of years in various cultures, this can change. Icons can change. Like the squatter man. The squatter man oftentimes is representation of hello, greeting. It doesn't always have to mean that it's this electric discharge in space, just because that might be what it originally was. So it's not like a one-stop shop. And I think that people get stuck into that too much. Like, no, it means this. It means electrical discharge. No, it means hello. Why can't it mean both? What culture are you talking about? Like, look at this. Here's a deity with all these nagas shooting out of its head. It's a blue deity. I think it's actually Vishnu. It's one of the top deity, like one of the major archetypes. Here's another representation of the door. See this? Look at how much this looks like the petroglyph. You've got this door, you've got this being in the center, flies down to earth. I think we can connect a lot of this with the Younger Dryas event, personally. I think a lot of this can be connected with the Younger Dryas event and what took place before, during, and after. See this? The Hittite Empire. Notice how they all have elongated skulls, elongated headdresses. Well, what about Merlin? Merlin, the mage. He had an elongated headdress. He has a cone head. Here's some more of these like light bulb looking symbols. And if you look at this light bulb symbol, you'll notice behind it what appears to be another plasma column. That's Preston. Let's go to this one here. Zoom in on this. Not letting me zoom in. It's not letting me zoom in now. Okay, let's see what else we got here. I had some more stuff I wanted to share with you guys. Oh yeah, I want to share this with you too. So, somebody had mentioned on their YouTube channel, on their post, that there's, like, if anybody talks about geoengineering, that they're basically full of it and they don't know what they're talking about. You know, this person thinks he knows everything, so that's okay. That's cool. But I did find an interesting patent that allows for cloud seeding and cloud production without actually having specific airplanes to do it. It's actually an additive that you can put into jet fuel. So whether or not they're doing it, I don't know. But I would like to share with you this interesting patent here. So let's take a look at this real quick. Okay. So over here. Here we go. So this is a patent that's called stratospheric Welsbach seeding for reduction of global warming. And it is a method described for reducing atmospheric or global warming resulting from the presence of heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere from the greenhouse effect. Such gases are relatively transparent to sunshine, but absorb strongly the long wavelength infrared radiation released by the Earth. The method ensues the step of seeding the layer of heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere with particles of materials characterized by wavelength-dependent emissivity. Such materials include Welsbach materials and the oxides of metals which have high emissivity and thus low reflectivities in the visible and 8 to 12 micron infrared wavelength regions. So basically what this is talking about is a fuel additive. Let's see if I can get more information on this here for you. The invention relates to the method for reduction of global warming resulting from the greenhouse effect, and in particular to a method which involves the seeding of the Earth's stratosphere with Welsbach-like materials. Now, the stratosphere is, well, we'll get to that in a minute. I've got a chart to show you. Global warming has been a great concern of many environmental scientists. Scientists believe that the greenhouse effect is responsible for global warming. Greatly increased amounts of heat-trapping gases have been generated since the Industrial Revolution. These gases, like CO2, CFC, and methane, accumulate in the atmosphere and allow sunlight to stream in freely, but block heat from escaping greenhouse effect. These gases are relatively transparent to sunshine, but absorb strongly the long wavelength infrared radiation released by the Earth. So, detailed description. It describes in this paper how there's an additive for jet fuel that will, well, perform, it's called stratospheric Welsbach seeding for reduction of global warming. And then there's a part in here that talks about how it's actually an additive used in jet fuel. And here's this is what I was thinking. Like, why wouldn't you, if you think that you found a solution to the problem by adding an additive to jet fuel, these, jets and airplanes, typically they run in grid patterns. So when you see these clouds that look like they're X patterns, there's a lot of crap in jet fuel anyway, is my point. So you don't really need to have specific airplanes constantly launching geoengineering if you can put it in the airplanes themselves as an additive. So my question is, and I don't know, I can't confirm this, but is it possible that there's an additive used in commercial jets in the fuel itself that has some type of geoengineering effect? So it helps create this cloud cover in attempts to cool the earth. And so people will look at these airplanes, like, because you can get there's an app for your phone that you can get. So if you see an airplane and you think it's, releasing some type of chems, some type of trails of chems, you can turn on your phone and you can see what kind of plane that is. And I've done that before. One time I thought for sure it was emitting a trail of chems, and come to find out it was just a commercial plane. It was like a Southwest flight or something like that. I thought, okay, very interesting. So to eliminate the need for additional jets and additional flights, let's just come up with an additive that we can put in the jet fuel, create more clouds. Oh, brilliant. Now it talks about how high up this is. It says it's in the stratosphere, but it's in the lower part of the stratosphere where actually commercial airliners fly, because it said it was like between 4 and 10 kilometers. So if you do the math, between 4 and 10 kilometers, that is meeting the parameters of certain airliners and commercial flights. A method is disclosed for reducing atmospheric warming due to its greenhouse effect resulting from a greenhouse gases layer. The method comprises the step of seeding the greenhouse gas layer with a quantity of tiny particles of materials characterized by wavelength-dependent emissivity or reflectivity. In that said materials have high emissivities in the visible and far infrared wavelength regions and low emissivity in the near infrared wavelength region. Such materials can include the class of materials known as Welsbach materials, which are basically like micrometals. The oxides of metal, aluminum oxide, are also suitable for the purpose. The greenhouse gases layer typically extends between about 7 and 13 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Okay, 7 and 13 kilometers, so about 4 miles. The seeding of the stratosphere occurs within this layer. The particles suspend in the stratosphere as a result of the seeding provided a mechanism for converting the black body radiation emitted by the Earth at near infrared wavelengths into radiation in the visible and far infrared wavelength, so that this heat energy may be re-radiated out into space, thereby reducing the global warming due to the greenhouse effect. There you go. Here's the patent number. Right there. Boom. 5003186. Date of patent, March 26, 1991. Just saying. I mean, look, I even pulled up another paper here, which is pretty good. I think you definitely want to see this too. Let me see if I can find it. It was a paper talking about the difference between contrails and chemtrails and describing different types of contrails that are used and different types of fuels that are used that create different types of contrails. And then it talked about scaffing and different applications used in military to evade radar and such. And a lot of these bits and pieces have been taken and turned into something that they're not. So there is so much disinformation out there about chemtrails and geoengineering and weather modification, tons of disinformation. But there's also some good, accurate information out there. So when I hear somebody come out and say that it doesn't exist and it's not true and everybody's crazy and they're the only reliable source and everybody else is a fraud, I take that personal. And I think you should too, because there's a lot of evidence and data that suggests otherwise. We just have to make sure we get the right information out there. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And I would love to hear your theories about these petroglyphs right now. I'm going to read through some of the comments section here, and I want to see what you have to say. Let's go back to the petroglyphs, though. Let's look at these petroglyphs. No, actually, I want to look at this again. I want to watch this footage again. Tell me that this is Starlink, man. Starlink! Probably not. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Popocatépetl. Just one singular object, so it's not 20 different satellites. It's one singular object shooting into the volcano. Probably not Starlink, just saying. But we did find Starlink. Here's another one that's probably not Starlink. Let me show you another one. Check this out. These are Starlink. We have confirmed that this footage right here, which was captured the day after the Starlink launch, these are Starlink. Looks pretty cool though, right? This is not Starlink. And this is not Starlink. Watch this. This is a separate video captured from a webcam, just a singular object. Now, it could be a shooting star. It could be a shooting star, some type of space debris. But when we watch this, it does appear that it's going into the volcano. And it's not Starlink because it's just a singular object. Now, once again, with the webcam and the frame rate, it could be a circular object that appears to be like a rod-shaped UFO. So we do have other footage that is not Starlink shooting into this amazing volcano. And hey, I'm not saying it's aliens. Not one. I didn't say once that this was aliens. So if you're like, you can't prove it's aliens, you're right. I can. And I don't necessarily think it's aliens. But it ain't Starlink. And it ain't a plasmoid. Now, volcanoes in ancient culture are looked at as gods and goddesses, especially like the Aztec Mayan culture. They looked at certain volcanoes as gods. But what do you think about the petroglyphs? And also, like if we go back and look at these petroglyphs, see if I can find them here. I want to pull this up again. Yeah. So this is the area. If you've ever been to southern Utah, it's absolutely beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. The geology is spectacular. Amazing, beautiful area. This is called the Kachina panel. And like zooming in on it, this is exactly what we were looking at with that prop paper. These plasma columns. Here's a guy with a bird coming out of his head, as you can see right here. Squatter man dude. And then you got these big kachinas that have the actual plasma inside of their bodies, like this guy right here. He's got a whole plasma column coming out of his head. Not an alien. Not an alien, folks. Ancient astronaut theories? Maybe, but not here. This is not an astronaut. Now, I think this one's really interesting because, like, this guy is right in the center here. He's smaller than the other two, but he's holding them together. Why is he doing that? And then he's got 1, 2, 3, he's got 5 of these lines above his head. The person next to him has 4, but he has an antenna shooting out of it as well, horizontally and vertically. And then the other guy does as well, but he's got 4 with this orb or like this circular object on the top, like a little water tower looking thing. Then he's got 4 lines to the right. Is that like a sound? I'm wondering if there's some type of, it reminds me of musical notes almost. I wonder if there's a way that we could turn this into music or sound. And then you'll notice to the left of him, this guy right here that has this interesting head. It's like an asterisk head. And then he has an X in his body. You will see deities and gods in Egypt that have the X in the body and a very similar head. This just blows my mind. Absolutely mind-blowing. This is probably my favorite, though, right here. Look at this guy. Is that a... See, I was also wondering, I'm like, okay, well, what does this glyph mean? And the more I looked at it, I thought to myself, what if it's somebody that came over from overseas, maybe came over from India or Cambodia, I don't know, and he had on this elaborate gear and this elaborate headdress and really cool technology that they weren't used to, and he took it off, and he like set it down. That's one theory, but you know what? I don't think so. I think that this is actually glorifying certain symbols. I don't think it's a specific person. I think it's a specific event that was turned into myth, that was turned into story, that now they can, like, they knew at the time what this meant. And I'm not convinced that these wolf tribal markings were done at the same time. I'm not convinced of that. But I could be wrong. And I'm okay if I am wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll let you know tomorrow or as soon as somebody debunks me. But I'm not giving any absolutes. Crying Hippie says, take care of the bird and it will produce eggs is what I see. Okay. Mark says, thunderbolts of the gods. Then after that, the rock writings were done. Bruce says it's talking about electricity. Hey, it could be. My friend Angela. I was with Kristen and my friend Angela and Preston and my son Preston, and Angela looked at these 2 objects to the right, and she said those look like light bulbs. I was thinking positive, negative. I saw those. I was thinking positive and negative for some reason. She said light bulbs. I'm like, wow, what if? That's pretty cool. Light bulbs, electricity. I don't know. Anode tower, cathode tower, ground or circuit completion. Great observation, D-realist. Hey, Celestial Magnetic. How you doing, man? How's TikTok going? Stu says it looks like the artist made those images lots of times. Planet Max says like a light shade. Kat says, I think it's about something, but who knows what. You Tell Me says, those are alien boobs. It's a billboard along the highway for the next rest stop. Light bulb. So somebody says, David brought up something. This is regards to when we were talking about the contrails. Flight paths are off when they deliberately spray in organized lines. Not necessarily, because when you're doing, if you're a flight control guy or gal and you're, making sure all the airplanes are staying out of harm's way, these checkerboard patterns are normal. Like those are the normal flight paths anyway. So I just think it would be much easier if you were going to attempt to block the sun as much as possible without having a whole bunch of, like an additional fleet of jets. Use commercial jets and use an additive in the fuel that can help create clouds. Really makes sense. And I mean, there's websites you can go to, even like weathermodification.org. It's been going on for years. The problem is most of the information out there is misinformation. So I can see why some people get upset and, like, oh, there's no such thing as any of it. It's all fake. It's all but it's not. Most of it is, but it isn't all BS. So, there's other people out there that get things right too. I'm just saying, like, whatever. Much love to you all. I hope you have a beautiful and fantastic day. And thank you so much for watching. Hit the bell for all notifications. Oh yeah, and check us out on Patreon. We've got some awesome content on Patreon. Exclusive, unedited, uncensored content you're only going to find on Patreon. Hope to see you for the webinar tomorrow at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. I'll send you a Zoom link. If you're interested in attending, just send me an email or send me a text and leave your comments in the comment section. First of all, I also wanted to say this, like, I appreciate if I'm wrong about something and somebody calls me out. I love you. Thank you very much. Be respectful about it, because I'm not looking for disinformation. I'm looking for the truth. And along the way, we get things wrong. So realize you're probably not perfect either, and you've probably got things wrong along the way. So be kind, man. Rewind. Don't be an a-hole. But anyway, much love, everybody. Have a beautiful day. Hit the bell. Be well and be the change you want to see. I'm Rex Pear, reporting to you live in a garage not down by the river.